Welcome back in, everybody. This is Pro Football Enterprises. I am Ben Parker. That is Shane Ratliff. Most of you have been with us all spring and all summer. Literally, ever since the last draft ended, we've been covering the 2027 NFL Draft, Shane, and we have covered a lot of players. Now, if you look through this channel, I think you'll find, I don't know, 30, 35 individual profiles that we put out on people where we put out, 5, 8, 13 minutes on a guy. But if you go into the group showings where it may be an hour show or an hour and 10-minute show, we actually give shout outs to several more people than just the deep dives we did on some of these guys. So Shane, me and you are somewhere, around 70, 80, 90 guys. I've lost count, even though there's only about 30, 35 individual profiles on these guys. So we've already covered the quarterbacks. We've already covered the running backs, the tight ends, the wide receivers. We have taken our time and plowed through the offensive linemen for the millions of you that do like that. Me and Shane love it. And we've got a handful more tonight that we'll cover. But first of all, Shane, welcome aboard as always. How are you doing, man?
Thank you as always, Ben. Doing well. Yeah, like you said, we're starting to cut down the last of the offensive linemen. So a group, as you stated, I'm always a happy person to get to watch any of the good film that we've gone through. Um, this last group, we have some interesting film that popped up on these guys. I'll be
Yeah.
excited to kind of hear where your thoughts are on this because we normally see things a little bit differently when it comes to positionings and things like that for the offensive line.
Yeah, which is good. I do like it when we agree, but I like it that we don't always agree because there is no two people in the world, no football room in the world in which everybody sees everything the same. You're going to have the disagreements, and sometimes that's what kind of fleshes out the real truth about a player is when you're like, well, not everybody saw this guy the same. So you start to see where the overlap is and does not. All right, let's get to it. Hey, by the way, we realize we're not presenting the best of the best necessarily tonight. I'm not saying these guys can't get there. We've already done a lot of offensive linemen. I believe it's something like 15, 17 offensive linemen's already up and out there. We did an entire watch list where we even gave a few guys a shout out that we did not deep dive on. So again, if the guy that you're looking for isn't here tonight, he's probably already up on the board. First up for us tonight, Coen Echols, height 6'4", 315 listed. I'll come back to that height weight later. You're welcome to hit it too, Shane. You see the LSU uniform. He transferred over from Texas A&M. Not a path we usually see, Shane. Don't usually see that pathway, but that's I think going to happen more and more in today's NFL. So Coen Echols, tell me about him.
Well, I think one of the things I was going to bring up, and you already brought it up, Ben, is the transfer portal. You're going to see a lot of the guys we talk about tonight are guys that transferred, a lot of them from a lower level to an upper level. I would say
Right.
going from LSU to Texas A&M is really more of a lateral move
Yes.
than it is anything else. But things that stuck out for me with Coen Echols, um, redshirt freshman starter. So basically, as soon as he got used to college, they put him right on the line at LSU. Um, his first season, zero penalties. Um, I mean, something that stands out to you as an offensive lineman. The other thing, though, once I continue to watch the film, you also see that some of the reason why he doesn't have penalties is there's some pretty glaring weaknesses to his game as well. Um, the one thing I will say is with the zero penalties, he didn't have very many holdings because they didn't call it, but he gave up 18 pressures. That's awful tough. LSU was not a great offensive line last year. Um, I think for him, it's hard to judge him completely on what's on film. He was left on an island a couple of times against some pretty talented interior offensive linemen. That made it very difficult for him. Um, I feel this year, especially with what Texas A&M has been looking to do the last couple of years on offense, he's going to show up a little bit more. Some of the things that I was worried about in the initial tape, I think he may clean up. Um, for me, I mentioned the non penalties. His hand placement to me looked jerky at best. I'm not sure if it was just a case of him trying to feel out what he is. You mentioned there's some discrepancies in the height and weight when you look at some different numbers around the league on what different people had him listed at. Um, I think right now, even with the amount of pressures, he's probably a more dominant pass blocker than I saw as a run blocker. Um, my big questions for him, though, as I said, with no penalties, I'd rather my offensive linemen get a couple of penalties because it leads to
Yeah.
you to believe that they're at least a little bit more aggressive. I think he does have to work on aggression. His second level blocking, kind of something we've hit on the last couple of guys as we've gone through, subpar at best on some of the film that you watch, especially against higher competitions. So I'll be interested to see. It'll be his second go around in the SEC, even though he switches teams. So we'll see as that picks up and where he paces out. I think he's a guy that has the athletic gifts. He doesn't have one thing that absolutely put him on a top list for me. And that's why, as you mentioned, Ben, kind of these guys, they have the ability to rise, but there's not a lot of guys that are already well known above this list.
Yeah, agreed. I'm going to overlap quite a few things you already said there about Coen Echols, and then I'm going to add a few things too, and we'll come back with you and find out where you're at. Two things though that you already hit on. The playing in the Southeastern Conference, man. 8 out of 12 weeks, you're going up against the defensive line that even if nobody's going to the NFL from that defensive line, they're still big, they're still fast, they're still athletic. It's tough. They come in waves. I don't care if it's Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee. I mean, they just come in waves at you. It's still a great opportunity to see what these offensive linemen can actually do because the Southeastern Conference, so many of the franchises, the teams have just that it's still high level college players, even if they're not heading to the NFL. And then the height weight thing to me, he looks a little heavier than that, and he looks a little
Mm-hmm.
shorter than that to me. I didn't really see 6'4", 315. But again, as always, stay tuned. We'll find out more when they show up at the NFL Combine. Okay, here's the notes for Coen Echols. Um, I wish he played with more driving strength, dominant strength. And I think he's got it in him, but you mentioned at the tail end of what you were talking about, the maybe needs to pick up the aggression a little bit. I look at his frame and the way he's built, he looks like a guy that could push people around. I just didn't see him doing much of that. So, I don't think it's a weight room thing to me. I think it is an aggression thing. I'd love to see him more driving strength and just more dominant than what he has shown so far. I think that would make people like him even better than they already do. Seems content, and this goes right in line with what you're saying. Seems content just managing things like he's got it handled. It felt like there were so many times, especially in pass blocking, that like he felt like he just kind of had it under control more or less, but he wasn't dominating. He wasn't shutting it down. He wasn't really locking people up. It just felt like he kind of sort of was a manager, had it under control. A little bit of chaos is
Mm-hmm.
okay. I would love to see a little bit more meanness come out of him, to be honest. And maybe he's a nice guy off the field. I don't know, but on the field, I would love to see a little bit more meanness than that. Uh, the anchor, he can get pushed back a step or so when people hit him initially. They come at him hard. You can see him. He's not usually the one pushing people. Usually he'll get pushed, but at a certain point, it's almost like there's a natural anchor that kicks in, and he does not allow them to go any farther than that. It's like he's got somewhere in his back, in his thighs, just a nice natural anchor that allows him to eventually stop them, kind of break stop them, to where he's not constantly in the quarterback's lap. Now, again, I look at his frame, I see what I think is talent. I wish he were pushing them more, but it looks like at a certain point the anchor kicks in. He doesn't get continually pushed back into the quarterback. The athleticism to me is okay. I see him going to second level, but I don't see him pulling across the line. I also don't see him pulling too much out there to the flat. Um, but he does seem to enjoy when he's on the move. It looks like when he's on the move to second level, he looks like a kid in a candy store. He looks like he's really excited. And I did notice even though it's sloppy at times and he misses at second level at times, and but there were some vicious blocks at second level too. There were a couple times where he just wiped people out. I mean, like almost dangerously so. But it's not great athleticism. It's not consistent either. So that was a bit of a problem. In pass blocking, guys can slip him either with a swim move or with that quick pop and swat of the hands. So I'd love for him to be able to clean that up from a technical standpoint. But in general, you mentioned you liked his pass blocking better. I do too. Not a good offensive line at LSU last year. You already said that. But he generally was not the weak spot in pass
Hmm.
protection. More often than not, he was handling business, and I liked his pass blocking, and I thought the run blocking was fine, nothing special. I would just love to see him get meaner, clean up the technique a little bit. I I currently have him in the fifth to seventh round, but this is a guy that to me, with another year of playing, could rocket way up the board. I feel like he's got the frame and the talent to be way up there. I just don't currently have him there because I can fairly easily see things that are problems. But this is a guy that to me that should not stay fifth to seventh round. That's just currently where I have him. So back to you. Final thoughts on Coen.
Well, I think you kind of mentioned it, Ben, with the height and weight. And the thing for me is, uh, like you said, he kind of appears more like a mauler offensive lineman than what they're trying to project him as.
Yeah.
Uh, to bring up somebody who was just at LSU too, I will be interested to see once he gets at the combine arm length. Because as you said,
Yep.
I don't think he's a true 6'4". I do think he's probably 330 as opposed to 315.
Yep.
But like you're saying, when I see them get into him early, I it's hard to see from the film if it's because he doesn't have the reach in the arms or if he's just not strong with the punch.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you said, when he's in the second level and he does get somebody that he's hunting for, he makes physical contact. Like, and when you're that level of aggressive on that, but you're not at the point of attack, that always surprises me
Right.
for what he's doing. And it also makes me wonder if once he's got a head of steam, it's easier for him to deal with the weaknesses that he has in the punch or possibly an arm length. Um, I have him right in the same range as you do, Ben.
Okay.
Like I said, I do think it'll be interesting to see how he is at Texas A&M versus LSU. Texas A&M the last couple years, although not everybody's panned out, has done an excellent job of recruiting, especially this type of build. So it'll be interesting to see with a year under his belt now and the summer, the spring ball and fall practice right now to see what he comes out ready for the beginning of the season with Texas A&M.
Yeah, agreed. That and he still felt a little on the young side to me, not in terms of his attitude, but in terms of his performance. It still felt like this was a guy that had a lot of developing that he could do. So I'm not worried about him. And I feel like I could easily draft him second round if he starts to show the mean streak and clean up the technique. But for now, still sitting back here. That is Coen Echols, Texas A&M. Next up, Greg Johnson from Minnesota. Listed height 6'6", weight 325. Shane, I'll go ahead and let you talk a little bit about Greg, and then I'll come into my notes here.
Well, this is another guy that you can really see him play a couple different positions. Minnesota in the last couple years has done a great job bringing in guys, developing them, and helping them. A lot of them put on weight. Greg Johnson's one of those guys that's kind of grown into the position he is. Minnesota's a power run game. Even their passing attack is mostly play action. So he is not afraid to get into it. I think for him, run blocking is light years ahead of pass protection right now. Um, he's a guy, though, I think the weight and the height are pretty dead on. When you see him, he definitely seems to match up well in those size categories. Um, as opposed to Coen Echols, who we just discussed, hand placement is excellent for Greg Johnson. Um, really sets himself up to not have to overextend himself in the drive blocking, um, pass protection. There's still some elements, but again, you're going against they're filming him last year. You're going against Ohio State. Well, the entire defense from Ohio State got picked in the first round. So, like, yes, you see those times where he does get beat cleanly, but you also understand, there's definitely some issues about how those things are going to play out. Um, I think that for him to continue on, this is really just a year of stacking those numbers. When I watch the film, there's not a ton of discrepancies. I don't see a guy that I'm going to I think will just be moving down the charts. I think he's going to continue to build. I think he'll be good in the room. And so he's going to start to rise up slowly. The thing for him, though, is there's no, again, we've talked about it. That's why these guys kind of sit in that level. There's no defining trait where you just go, this guy is so far above everybody else. I think when you look at him in the combine at some of those technique drills, I think he's going to have really impressive numbers because he's a guy that's going to work on those to make sure it shows up. But he's not going to run, he's not one of these guys that's running a 4.6, 4.7 40 and then getting ready to just explode onto the draft.
I'm pretty much with you there. So, let me run through the Greg Johnson stats and then we'll hash out anything that's left over. Fairly quick feet in pass blocking, so I like that. The feet do shuffle and move. That's always a big help, man. It just always is. You've mentioned dancing bears for a couple of years now, so we've worked together. That always helps when you're this big and you can move your feet quick. Even if you're not a great player, it can help you get out of trouble when somebody's got you beat, right? Just those quick feet. So he did have fairly quick feet. I do like that. One of the first things I noticed right away, he looks confused or surprised a lot. Like he wasn't even expecting to have to block certain guys. That surprised me. Or maybe he's checking the inside guy too long and not moving off that to hit the outside guy. Sometimes though, it was almost like he just wasn't maintaining focus on the outside rusher, like he was trying to split duties or something. And so I don't usually see that from offensive linemen. I do see it from time to time. That did seem to be a problem with him. So you never know. Does that mean the coaching staff is asking him to do a little bit too much? Does that come from him playing 2 games at tackle and the rest of the season at guard? Did that contribute to it this past year? I'm sure it did. Or does he just need to do a little bit more, off the field work to make sure that he's got an understanding of what he's supposed to be doing? But I did see that. Um, the technique and balance both look good to me. You already hit that. Technique wise, looks good. Balance looks good. I mean, that's how many guys do we talk about that have a ton of talent, but they don't look good technique wise, and their balance is all over the place. We're going to mention a guy later tonight that's the same thing. Well, this guy looks technique and balance looks really good. I mean, I really liked that. You already mentioned that. Can be beat inside or outside on occasion, but in general, the pass blocking is good from a physical standpoint. Like this guy's capable of pass blocking, so I didn't see a problem there. The anchor is okay. It's never dominant. I didn't see him driving people as much as I would, maybe hope that a guy could. But I didn't see him get pushed into the quarterback either. That wasn't a big thing. So I thought his anchor, his drive, was solid, not fantastic. Didn't see a lot of athleticism. Now, Minnesota did not ask him to move around a lot. There's not even many instances of him doing that. But in what few instances I did see him move outside his circle, I didn't see a lot of athleticism there. And you already said that as well. Probably not going to blow it out at the combine, right? Which is fine. If he's a guy that works in his station, that is just fine. I'm happy with that. He could probably do a little bit more if they needed him to, but still limited athleticism. The run blocking looked good, especially though. I thought they just needed him to open a hole. I like that. They didn't always run to his spot as much as I would have liked for an NFL prospect, but still, this was a guy that could open a hole. And so that's important. You can count on him to do that. So the things that I do like about him, the balance and the technique are all solid. The height, weight does seem to hold up, 6'6", 325. That's important. The quick feet, that's important. And then the ability to open a hole, those are all important things there. So I check on that. Um, I just didn't see a lot of high-end talent. So where, say, for instance, Coen Echols we just talked about, that's a guy that Mike could launch up into the top 50 if he gets his act together. I don't see Greg Johnson launching in the top 50 from a talent standpoint, but this is a guy that I would be proud to add to my offensive line. So right now, I've still got him back in that rounds 4 to 7, probably closer to fourth, fifth round is where I've got him. If he continues to do, like you said, just kind of add to the numbers, I might be interested in getting him higher. But for now, I'm at rounds 4 to 7. Last thoughts on Greg here?
Well, I think to kind of wrap up what you mentioned too, Ben, he did play some tackle, more guard. I think he is better
Yeah,
suited technique wise, and like you said, with a lack of athleticism to play inside. Um, you mentioned with him, uh, looking to the outside, letting edge rushers by. I really think there are some times where, like you even mentioned, either is it confusion or is he so used to having somebody to his outside to get
right,
that block, to
right.
chip, to go to the outside where he's like, well, if I let him go this way, I have more room around the quarterback. It's almost like when he moved inside to guard, he still thought he was pass protecting out at tackle, and you're laying a defensive lineman right into your quarterback because now he's not behind him; he's right in his face.
Yes.
Um, I think I had mentioned it before, and you kind of hit on it again, Ben. I think he's going to be a guy that technique wise, you're going to go, okay, I see his limitations. He's going to be one of those guys where I don't think the ceiling continues to rise, but I think they're going to get a pretty good concept of where his floor is going to be as a talent. And when you mentioned it as well, I don't think he's a guy that hits a big rise, unless there's something in him that just comes out, or if Minnesota has just an absolutely dominant season this year. Um, but there's a lot of other offensive linemen in the Big Ten that are going to take eyeballs off of him. So, uh, like I said, and you mentioned, I think he's a late round guy. I think he's a guy that can swing because he can play. Probably can play center as well, guard and tackle. So he gives you options. But from the like you said, now almost 20 offensive linemen we've gone through, I would definitely put him on the lower end of the athletic side from what we've discussed.
Yeah, same boat. This is a guy that to me should get drafted if he has another good year, but it's probably not going to be in the desirability top 100, top 75 kind of a grouping for me. That is Greg Johnson, Minnesota. Shane, I'm going to mix it up just a little bit here. I'm going to skip Jacarrius Peak. We'll come back to him in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and hit Cash Cleveland here, and then we'll go back to the other guy. Cash Cleveland, Texas Tech. Came over from Colorado, as you can see by the uniform, height 6'2", weight 300. I have asterisks by both of those numbers. And the reason for that is I saw a bunch of different numbers getting thrown around on this guy. And listen, you're always going to see different numbers, but usually there's kind of a thread of some consistency. I didn't really see that from Cash Cleveland, so I just plucked 6'2" and 300. You are welcome to comment on that, but go ahead and tell us what you got on Cash Cleveland.
Well, I think one of the things you just started off with, Ben, is true. I mean, even if you look at this picture right here, he looks undersized.
Yeah,
So if you're telling me that's 6'2" and 300 pounds, then the next people next to him should be 6'8" and 340. That was not the case at Colorado. I would also throw in that if you've played offensive line at Colorado anywhere in the last 3 years, it's not a great stamp of approval for you.
mm-mm.
For him to make the move to Texas Tech, I do think for the talent and the skills that he has, the offensive scheme for Texas Tech, wide splits, help, quick pass game, all plays into what he is going to be more comfortable in. Um, I think though, when you look at the film, I think it makes you question his size even more.
Yeah,
He is a guy that does get beat by the bull rush. They can beat him around the outside. Um, didn't impress me physically in the run game. Um, Colorado's offense, like I said, the last couple of years has just been crazy. Um, it's going to be difficult for him this year, and I think staying in the Big 12 and moving to Texas Tech, I think there's going to be more eyeballs on him than there were even at Colorado.
yes,
Um, he's one of the guys. I had him ranked as one of the lowest ones that we've talked about. He got some pub early on for an ability to start early at Colorado, but yeah,
that's
like I
not a
said, I'd be
very high
interested to see
bar.
what
Yes.
I'd be interested to see some of the notes you have on him, Ben, because I spent some time looking for positives, and most of them were, it's not going to be as bad as it was last year. So
That's great. Every once in a while, Shane's not funny all the time, at least not on air. I don't know. Maybe in real life, Shane's a comedian. I don't know, but Shane's not often funny on air. But when he is, he breaks a good one, and that's a good one, Shane. Okay, I'm right with you. I did not spend as much time tape studying Cash as I did the other guys because it didn't take long to really get down to what you just said. I question the size. I really do. You look at him even in the picture, I just question the size. Now, listen, I like the feistiness and the attitude. I think his communication is good. I mean, check all those boxes. But this is an NFL prospect we're talking about, and I'm with you. At the moment, I've kind of got him seventh round slash UDFA is what I've got him as, and that's if he puts together a good season here at Texas Tech. So that's where I'm at on Cash Cleveland now. Um, the bull rush thing's a real problem. That's a real problem. If they can do it to you in college, and you can't really find a way to stop that, then that's going to be an even bigger problem at the NFL level. They're going to zero in on that and just put the biggest defensive tackle they've got right over the top of you. They get all week to study you. So, that was a big problem. The fact that guys can get around him on the edge too. So, um, listen, can he put together a good season with Texas Tech? Will those short sets and the quick speed game help him? Sure it will. Yes, it will. But we're talking NFL, so I just didn't see enough here from Cash Cleveland to move him up the board, and he may not even be on the board when it really comes draft time, is where I'm at on Cash Cleveland. But it's a guy we had to talk about because there was his name popping up a good bit. So anyway, that's Cash Cleveland. I don't mean to disrespect him too much, but still got some work to do to be desirable for NFL teams. All right, Shane, let's go back here and hit Jacarrius Peak, South Carolina. This was an interesting guy for me. Height 6'4", weight 300. I'll go ahead and let you talk on him first, and then I'll get into it. I kind of this was also almost Jekyll and Hyde here for me with Jacarrius
mm.
Peak, but I'll let you talk about Jacarrius first.
So to start off, Ben, and we've discussed it numerous times already tonight. This is a transfer guy.
Yeah,
Uh, you know, uh, played well enough for another team to want you, but I think you hit the nail on the head on this, Ben. There's film that you watch where you go, I would take this guy for the next 10 years in the NFL and be very happy. And then there's
yes,
also film where you just go, whew, you know, I'm worried about him against FCS competition. I'd be
yeah,
worried, even maybe lower because there's some times where he looks lost out there. Um, I would say also, I do think the weights are right, but when you look at him on film, the 6'4" and 300 pounds, he looks light out there.
yes,
I mean, that probably does mean that he's low body fat and carried that weight real well, but I don't think it hurt him to bulk up. Um, North Carolina State went through some interesting offenses the last couple of years. So it's been hard to get a real gauge on, what's going on through this. generation of offensive linemen that are coming out. Um, I mean, I think of the ones we've talked about, Ben, out of this group especially, I think he's the one guy that can kind of tag team with Echols. He has a chance where he may rise up some draft boards because the things that he does well are going to catch attention. And if South Carolina does as well as some people think with Lenora Sellers and some of the other weapons they have, Nikhil
Yeah.
Harbor, then he's going to get more eyes on him. But he's also a guy where I would worry that there's some things that are going to put him so far down on the draft board that'll be hard for him to pull himself out.
Yeah. Listen, I love that in a nutshell. I wouldn't have to add anything to it. I'm going to go through my notes anyway, but that's in a nutshell. That's Jacarrius Peak. And when we get to NFL draft time, when they're talking about him inside of NFL rooms, there's going to be some divisiveness about what to do with him, because of everything you just said. First of all, the weight thing, he looks a little bit bowling ballish to me. He just kind of has that round look instead of a tall or lean or hulking look. It's a little bit more roundish kind of a look to him physically, which is fine. Some guys operate that, but that's what I see when I see him. Here's the notes. The talent is there, but the consistency is not. It's just never there. It's sloppy and it's inconsistent. There are times where he shows good hands and a great punch. I seen him punch a couple of times and it was beautiful, but he didn't seem to use it or show it that often. I don't, I have no clue why. I honestly can't explain that. Often he shows quick feet, good balance, and good leverage. I mean, he's got business handled, but not all the time. Oftentimes he drops his hands. Oftentimes he gets off balance. There are times where he's out leveraged, and I can't explain it from one play to the next. I really can't. It is a maddening inconsistency, and it's going to affect. It makes it very difficult for me to give an ultimate grade on him, but I'll do it here in a second. I did notice something unique about him. He has an effective way of kind of engulfing or bear hugging people sometimes and stopping them. There aren't too many guys I see doing that, but he's doing it. It's effective, generally speaking. But now there are times, other times, again, I talked about the inconsistency. There's other times when they're all up into him like that, and they're able to work under him to get around him to the quarterback. So again, he's not always able to perfect whatever that bear hug is. The anchor is okay. The goal line push is mediocre to bad from what I saw. Um, the pass blocking to me looked way better and way cleaner late in the season.
Mm-hmm.
So the games I watched were Miami, Georgia Tech, and FSU. That FSU game, which was in November, was way cleaner. And I know people say, well, FSU doesn't have great edge rushers. Yeah, that's true, but still, as opposed to say the Georgia Tech game earlier in the year,
Mm-hmm.
he looked way cleaner and way more efficient versus Florida State than he did against Georgia Tech. So that would at least suggest he improved as the year went along. But again, this is an inconsistent player still. Um, in the games I watched, now NC State did not use this very much for some reason. But in the games I watched, his best attribute seems to be outside zone blocking or second level blocking. There were times where he almost looks like a big giant running back. He runs so well to get to the second level, and he can even kind of do that floating out to the flat to catch some blocks. Didn't see him do much of it, but on the rare occasions that I did, this guy looked really fast, like he was on a mission to get out there and at least try to hit somebody. So, I'd be interested to see a lot more of that if South Carolina cares to do that. But he looked explosive and fast when he did that. So all this inconsistency and talent left me trying to figure out. I know he's not a second round draft pick, but he's got second round talent. Inconsistency wise, this could be a seventh round draft pick. He's that wildly inconsistent. So I dropped him somewhere in the third to fifth round. just kind of as a wait and see pendulum spot for him, really. This guy could slip all the way down to 6 and 7. He could climb all the way up into the top 50 or 75. I do think he's got that kind of potential talent there for me. So that's Jacarrius Peak. Your final thoughts here on Jacarrius?
I think you hit it on it, Ben. Wild discrepancies in what he has. I'll be interested to see what it's going to be like with Lenora Sellers being his quarterback.
Yeah.
Some guys look better when they have a quarterback that can kind of continue to create, and some guys look even worse because they lose that point to where this is where he's going to be in the pocket, and as long as I get my guy around that spot,
Yep.
we're going to be okay. Um, like you said, it's a guy that has flashes that moves them up the board, but there's also weaknesses that are going to keep you on the down low. Um, South Carolina has become a trendy pick for a lot of people that they think they could have a breakout year this year after all these years of this is going to be our year. Um, so it'll be interesting to see how he meshes with the offensive line and what they can get out of it.
I would love to see it. I'm a little bit skeptical if this is the year that South Carolina rockets to I don't know, 10-2 and a top 10 finish. We'll see though. The potential is there. All right, that is Jacarrius Peak from South Carolina. Final guy for the night, Tyler Mercer, coming over from Kansas. This was a bit of a hot-ish name last summer. It worked itself down a little bit, but it's still desirable enough that Oklahoma State really wanted him to come over and be a part of what they're doing, all the exciting new things that they're trying to put in. So, and believe me, they've got some at least interesting things. We'll see how well it turns out. But height 6'4", weight 300. Shane, go ahead and tell us about Tyler Mercer.
Well, and you mentioned, Oklahoma State's where he ends up at, but some interesting context to this is that Tyler Mercer was originally a North Texas signee, and he actually went to the transfer portal. Basically, you hate to say it, but a year early, because North Texas caught fire last year, and then everybody basically raised up and moved on to Oklahoma State,
Yep.
which then again gave them a chance to go back and get Tyler Mercer back with the team that he basically left at North Texas. So it'll be interesting to see that. As you mentioned, Ben, in the beginning of last year, he was kind of a hot button name, especially as hot button as centers are when you're talking about college prospects. But uh, he's a guy that you don't worry about the physicality. Obviously, is one of the smarter linemen in the groups that he's played with. Um, if you take a guy that transfers away from you and you go get him the second you get an opportunity to, I think that
Hmm.
also tells you where they think about his mentality and what he can do. Um, again, played on a bad Kansas team last year. The two things for him, though, both North Texas and Kansas, heavy, dominant run game. A lot of movement at the line of scrimmage, a lot of zone reads, and having an intelligent center makes those plays a lot easier for you. Um, for me, things I'd like to see improvement on finishing the block. I think he does a good job of getting in the way and getting where he belongs. I don't always see him dominating at the point of attack when he can. Um, in the beginning of the year at Kansas, he had some problems with the bull rush. It seemed like you mentioned for when we were talking about uh, getting better as that year goes on and how you see people play against different tape. Later in the year, it seems like he had kind of balanced himself out. Hard to tell if maybe there was some injuries or something at the beginning of the year and that kind of added to it. Um, I think he's a guy that's going to get eyes on him early again, though. Oklahoma State is an interesting team. The Big 12 is kind of open for business right now. Um, Texas Tech is kind of the standout. You have BYU where you can worry about some things, but I think Oklahoma State is going to rebound pretty effectively this year. And there's a lot of eyes on the quarterback and running back, which is going to make it real easy for you to get a good view of the center at all times.
That is a great point. Let me hit Oklahoma State real quick because we're not a college football show, but we do enjoy talking about some of these teams too. You're exactly right. I'm not suggesting Oklahoma State's just going to rocket to the top of the conference this year, but there's a lot of room for Oklahoma State to take off and do a lot of damage in the conference this year. So we'll see just how quickly they take off and get acclimated here because there's a lot of exciting stuff going on here with Oklahoma State, especially on the offensive side. And Tyler Mercer is a part of that. You mentioned him leaving North Texas basically a year early, right before they exploded. Well, you're right. The first thing they do is go back and grab him when the whole crew goes to Oklahoma State. The intelligence level of a guy like this really does. We don't see this with all the positions in the NFL, but we do see it with center. Even if you are not a top tier talent at center, you can have a long career in the NFL because you're just that smart and you are physically good enough to play that position. And I think he's got that. Now, listen, I don't think he's just good enough to hang on. I think he's better than that. Center's probably, you're going to have to be one heck of a beautiful center to get a top 40 pick. So I'm not suggesting that. I feel like he could easily be third round if he turns in a good year with Oklahoma State this year. It would not surprise me. Now, at the moment, I don't quite have him that high. I'm probably more fourth to fifth round. But if he puts together a great season, you mentioned all the eyeballs being there on him. If he can clean up a little bit of what the first part of the year struggles, what looked like he was handling in the second part of the year, the intelligence, the run blocking, the being on the move. NFL coaches love that. We've seen guys go down the boards because they weren't able to be on the move. He is able to be on the move. So between the intelligence and being on the move, this guy has what NFL coaches often want to be able to kind of turn their offense into a multiple option kind of a thing. So it wouldn't surprise me for him to show up in the third round of the draft this year if he has a big season at Oklahoma State. And that's about where I'm at on him. Let's say fourth to fifth round with a chance to move up to the third. Your final thoughts on Tyler?
No, I agree with kind of your positioning on that, Ben. Like you said, you have to be an absolute freak of talent as a center for anyone to even talk about you in those first two rounds.
Right.
It's a
Yep.
position that when things go bad, they're the first person you blame, but they don't spend the draft capital to go fix those problems. So
No.
it's an interesting thought when it comes to uh, the offensive line, and center always is a position where you think if somebody can't cut it someplace else, that's the place we're going to move them to. But then year after year, when you have a weak center, you have a weak offensive line. It's a mashup of how things work. Uh, I think, like we both mentioned, Ben, I think his intelligence, his ability to communicate the scheme and what else is going on to other players uh, is going to be the thing that keeps him afloat. Um, we both mentioned it. I'm interested to see what Oklahoma State does. It's not even in this transfer portal. Uh, you're normally taking, some key guys. I mean, they really left the cupboards bare at North Texas. So if you were a football of any merit, you were going to come to Oklahoma State and they were going to open up the money banks for you. So it'll be interesting to see how they play. And like I said, I do think their offense is going to jump up the charts in the Big 12, and that will give Tyler Mercer a lot more eyeballs and a lot more people thinking about what he can do in the NFL.
Yeah, totally agree. And excuse me, on the North Texas Oklahoma State thing, I think everybody has caught up now to the idea that even though you may have came from a small school with a crew of people, it can work at the bigger levels. We've seen it now several times. And I don't mean just national championship, like say with the Indiana crew, but we've seen it in other places, not everywhere, but we've seen it where the coach brings the coordinator with him and brings about, 20 players, 15, 10 players, whatever it is from the lower level. And, they just add to the talent that's already up there at the school. We've seen it work, so I don't see why it can't work here. And real quick for people wanting to know, well, I'm seeing Tyler Mercer way down the board. He's 267 on the board I'm looking at, right? Well, There are a number of reasons for that. Being at Kansas is one of those reasons. Struggling early in the year is another reason because once you're tend to drop, people tend to forget about you. There's so many other prospects to look at. So a lot of people may not have noticed the second half of the year pickup. Being a center tends to drop you if you're not playing well just right out the gate and explosiveness. Those things can all drop you, and then it takes a while to just get back up. But this is an NFL guy here, and it's just a matter of which NFL team wants him for which round. I'm not suggesting he will be third round material, but this is an NFL guy here whenever he gets done playing college football. So that is Tyler Mercer, Oklahoma State. Shane, I've enjoyed it as always. I really appreciate the work, and everybody, thank you for being with us. We have covered over 20 offensive linemen now in depth, and we've even mentioned more as far as just giving them some shout outs. So we've plowed through this fairly well, and we're about to go on and hit defensive tackles and defensive ends coming up next over the next the rest of summer and before the college football season really truly gets into full gear. You'll see that probably right about the time that the college football season is starting. So everybody, thank you for watching. This is Pro Football Enterprises. We're also linked to the Box Score Network, as you can see there on the screen. Have a great one, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.